our host for today, David Lee. And if you've got any questions that you'd like to say to David or the panelist, if you just send your questions to Q&A Stephanie, and I will make sure that David gets them. Over to you, David.
Thanks very much, Steph, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's discussion about the role of data in global financial innovation. As Steph said, my name is David Lee. I'm simply here to guide you through the discussion and make the best out of our expert panellists. Please note that all mutant algorithms have been screened out in advance of this discussion. Which is part of a series of activities organised by the University of Edinburgh's Data-Driven Innovation Programme to look in detail at some of the innovative ways that data is being used to tackle a wide range of modern-day challenges, obviously including the response to the pandemic, which has changed our lives in so many ways. So look out for a series of podcasts and articles on the DDI website. This is the second panel discussion as part of that series and will also be made available on the website to view and share afterwards. So it is being recorded. A final plug, if I may, for this particular supplement, which you can't see as I hold it up because of the background. It's called Doing Data Together. It's published in the Scotsman today and on scotsman.com. In conjunction with the DDI Innovation Programme, there is some great stuff in there and it's exceptionally well written, though I would say that because I wrote most of it myself. One of the major issues discussed in the supplement and central to what we're talking about today is, of course, the Global Open Finance Centre of Excellence, or GOFCO. As many of you will know, the centre based in Edinburgh received a £22.5 million grant from UK Research and Innovation's Strength in Places Fund in June. And our panellists today and the organisations they represent were at the very heart of the initial idea and the successful funding bid for GOFCO. So the plans for and the potential of the centre will form a big part of our discussion. Please join in that discussion by asking questions and making comments through the chat function. I'm sure most of you are aware what to do. Just go to the bottom of your screen, click on chat and add your question in there and I will put them to the panel. Please also tweet using the hashtags DDI discussions and hashtag open finance and please tag at Data Capital Edinburgh. As there's no fire alarm planned today, I'll move straight on to introducing our panellists. Nicola Anderson is Strategic Development Director of Fintech Scotland. Raffaella Calabresi is Associate Professor in Data Science at the University of Edinburgh's Business School. Gbenga Ibikunle is Professor and Chair of Finance at the University of Edinburgh. And Gavin Littlejohn is Chair of the Financial Data and Technology Association, FData Global, and he's also founder and a former CEO of Money Dashboard. Gavin, I'm going to start with you. I listened to a podcast with you in June where you described the building blocks of open banking. Are those building blocks very similar for open finance? Where does data fit in and why does open finance matter in the first place?
Thank you, David. So the background to open finance is the right of the consumer to be able to accept the opportunity to share the financial data with any regulated actor who may better meet their needs. When we think about the context of open banking, we've currently, from a UK perspective, only got access to the ability to do that under the context of law and regulation for payments data. All of the other data assets that were in long use by the market, for example, being able to share your mortgage data or loan data or investment data, pension data, are not caught by the regulation and are therefore out with the liability framework and not currently delivered through a market orchestrated technology as we have seen for payments. So the building blocks for open finance, I guess the same building blocks for open banking, are firstly a right of the customer in their data. Not every market in the world has a customer data right enshrined in privacy law. Within the context of the European Union, we have the GDPR. We've got a new Data Protection Act coming through in India. We've got LGPD in Brazil. We've got customer data right in Australia. There's a raft of legislation being brought forward in markets across the globe to ensure that. The second is the role of explicit consent. So if you have the right to share the data, you need to be able to express that right and both be able to share the data with an actor that you choose and to be able to take it away. It's not designed though as a free-for-all. In other words, the actors who are in the market have to go through an approvals process and accreditation. In the UK, that takes the form of applying to the Financial Conduct Authority under an authorisations process where you have to show you have the correct capabilities to be in the market, including fit and proper people, privacy policy, adequate perimeter security, cyber risk insurance, and a fair and appropriate business model. The third part of it is a liability framework. So how do we ensure that the customer is made whole when things go wrong? There is going to be situations where things go wrong for the customer. There will be data breaches. There will be issues arising. At the moment, we've got a context through the Second Payment Services Directive affecting the bank payments data. The liability framework, though, is not particularly robust yet. Whilst we know who is responsible, we've not yet figured out properly how to make them accountable and to ensure that the customer's compensation is made. The fourth issue is creating, or the fourth building block is creating the legal and regulatory framework that support and protect the first three, the privacy, the expression of rights, and the liability framework, and to effectively enshrine that in law and make sure there's processes around it. The fifth area is the creation of a high-level technology architecture that enables the safe sharing of information. And it's important to do that before you try to design the orchestration so that you have some understanding of what sort of business plan you need to execute it. And that leads me on to the sixth, which is the governance and funding arrangements. How do we invest in the common architecture? Who owns it? How is it maintained? Is it belonging to the nation state or does a company own it? And then, there are a whole range of situations. Having been on the steering group of open banking in the UK from the start and throughout, I can say hand on heart, there have been situations where both, the fintech side or the bank side would have packed up and gone home in frustration were it not for the fact that we had a governance mechanism that could push forward. And not every decision goes in your favor, but there is a process that actively moves and makes decisions. And then the final piece of the puzzle is monitoring and compliance. So how do you test the quality of the technical delivery and so forth? The final thing I want to say, I guess, before we move on is the easiest way to think about open banking or open finance more generally is to think of it like electricity. You don't consume it directly. You use appliances that consume it. So if there are any consumers or businesses listening in thinking, how do I consume open banking? You don't. You have to access an application that makes use of it. And the key thing that open finance solves for is information asymmetry. So currently, if you're a large bank or a large fund manager or insurer and you've got all the customers' products, it makes it very difficult for another party to be in a position to choose to compete. And also, you're more likely to treat the customer fairly if you have a better understanding of the whole situation that the customer finds himself in, rather than just seeing a siloed piece of it. So open finance enables a third party to collect all the financial information, get a holistic view of the customer's financial situation, and therefore be in a position to make more appropriate and frictionless pathways to better outcomes.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. Nicola Anderson, it's a complex picture that Gavin's outlined there. There's a lot of pieces in that jigsaw, as he says. At its best, what can open banking and open finance deliver for consumers if all those pieces fit together well?
Thank you, David. It certainly is complex, as Gavin has described it there. I see it very much open banking as an enabler. So it's enabling us to have all of these conversations actually. The building blocks that we talk about here include having great contribution from a really broad range of stakeholders, regulators, industry, academia, and customers. And we've created an environment that allows us to do that. So as we think about open banking as an enabler, it allows us to positively disrupt and come around problems that we know that exist and think about how we use that data that we can get access to with that breadth of stakeholder engagement to drive these solutions. And we're really privileged in Scotland to see a whole range of fintechs really thinking about some of these complex issues and complex problems, whether that's financial exclusion and vulnerability, getting better access to credit because the data enables deeper insight to some of these issues. We have great strength in Scotland around some of that, and I know that the team in Edinburgh and at the university are working on some of these problems too.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. And Gbenga, I'll come to you with a kind of similar question. You know, say Gavin's outlined that complex picture. Where do you see as the main challenges there? And if we can overcome them, who benefits most from success in the open finance space?
Thanks, David. I think I'm in agreement with Gavin broadly. I think the key economic benefit of open finance from a welfare perspective, that is, welfare in economic terms, is the improved informational efficiency that increasing access to financial and other economic data offers. In a typical economic system, there is always some noise, which is driven by the lack of information that will normally provide a clear view of how things are within that system. Accessing more data in a relatively frictionless manner will normally enhance the system's ability to function, such as making decisions in an optimal manner. And this is mainly because every data point, every additional information about a person's mortgage or mortgage payment history or something of a similar nature, any observation whatsoever potentially provides information that can aid decision making. Let's look at an example of the process of determining whether a person is credit worthy or not. Credit providers will collect as much information as possible from applicants, but a lot of this is based on self-assessment, and also there are often gaps in the picture available to credit providers. So this is where the noise is coming into the system from, and what providers do in this situation is they try to address this by accounting for what we call adverse selection costs, which basically are the costs that are associated with having less information than the person or the counterparty that one is dealing with. So in this case, it is the credit providers who have less information than the customers that they're dealing with. So because they do not want to be adversely selected, they try to model that a certain percentage of the credit portfolio might go bad, and this informs the pricing of their products. Unfortunately, this may also affect people indiscriminately, and this is where the economic benefits of the open finance provisions come in. So the information asymmetry, which Gavin referred to earlier, also affects this kind of process. So this information asymmetry in determining whether someone is creditworthy or not, it can be addressed to some extent by the increased ease of access to financial data that is now possible through open finance provisions. So risk can then be more accurately determined, and the pricing and the creation of financial products can be more efficient and in line with the needs of consumers, the needs of society, really. And if it is well implemented with the necessary safeguards in place, open finance can only be a positive thing in terms of societal welfare. So the reduction in information asymmetry reduces the producer surplus. Sorry for throwing in a little bit of economics here, but the producer surplus has always been basically more or less the profit that is gained by the credit provider. So the producer here are the service and product providers, and it will increase the consumer surplus, which means that the society, or at very least, the aggregate volume of consumers that are accessing financial products will increase the benefit that they obtain from the system. So ultimately, the main beneficiary here is the average customer, but there are also benefits for financial services providers as well, because the increased information that they now have that they can access reduces their risks. And as their risk is reduced, then their surplus will also reduce. And I think this is only fair.
Okay, building on what you've just said there, Gbenga, come to you, Rafaela. How Gbenga's talked about benefits for both sides, but how do we make sure we get that balance right between what open finance can deliver for consumers, customers, individuals in a safe, transparent way, and the business benefit that flows from that? How can we get that? How can we get that balance right, particularly with focus to the Edinburgh City region?
Yeah, I think the principal way of balancing the benefits for both for people that provide their data and for companies that use this data is ensuring that there is a strong regulation. Is exactly what Gavin mentioned before. So I think it's important that there is a strong regulation in place on which kind of information can be shared, who can have access to this kind of data, and also it needs to be strictly regulated, the data storage and the data transfer. So I think that's the first way of ensuring this balance. A second way, it's also to provide the right training to businesses, to all the businesses that are involved in open finance. So since in this way, with open finance, we have access to a new kind of data, it's important that people that are involved in open finance, they also understand how to work with this new kind of data. So in this way, they can also take advantage related to the question that you asked before to GB of this new kind of information. So they can also provide new kind of services for problems that maybe they haven't been solved before. So that's an incredible opportunity for the business sector. Thank you.
Thank you. So Gavin, you've been obviously very closely involved in the Guavacore project all the way through. What essentially will Guavacore do? Is there a lot of work to do to actually identify that work plan? And particularly, we're talking about a global economic observatory. I'm just interested, what does that mean? What is a global economic observatory? And it's also got this aim of delivering social and economic benefit to all corners of the globe. That's a big ambition, isn't it? I think you're on mute, Gavin.
Sorry, David. I chair a trade association that operates in open finance across multiple markets. And one of the things that we observed was there were a number of areas that needed to be solved in the market that appeared to be only solvable through collaboration, and where no one government or one regulator or one firm could possibly seek to solve those issues on their own. So we set out to create a capability that just works through those different problems one step at a time. One of the first areas was the challenge of innovation when you're not a data holder. So if you're looking to develop algorithmic distribution of financial services or manufacture products that require algorithms in the risk model, how do you do that without training data? It's very, very difficult, and the customer's got no real reason to give you the data until you can give them a product in return, which is creating a traditional chicken and egg situation. What we sought to do was to create a mechanism to combine data for multiple markets, multiple market sectors, to enable firms that want to innovate to properly test and manufacture their algorithms and not only get to market quicker and easier, but to be more accurate in their delivery and get a better product market fit. The second thing which we did, which was a natural extension of that, was if you're beginning to ingest data from a whole variety of market sectors, you've got a window into what's happening into the real economy, which enables you to look at things like how people save for long life, studying demographic changes and population changes, to be able to look at the polarization between renters and homeowners driven by those same factors, the impact of unfair access to credit for perhaps migrant workers or young people, who don't have a proper credit footprint, and then to sort of combine, what's going on in the SME sector, the consumer sector, and we've been working very, very heavily on that particular area, beginning to work on ingesting different data sets to develop not only public policy, but a capability for academic research and to kind of guide markets going forward. And then the third area we looked at was the creation of an algorithmic bias test laboratory. So I like to think of this as somewhat analogous to having your car MOT'd. We'd like to think that we develop a capability that companies can come in on a regular basis, perhaps yearly or something similar, and where they subject their algorithms to a check, and they get a pass or fail on the regulatory test. Is it compliant? And an advisory on the ethical test to try to give the company some context of the sorts of things their supervised machine learning should be doing and not doing. The fourth area was the ability to look at the alignment of technical standards across international markets. So let's imagine you're a Citibank or an HSBC or a Standard Chartered. You don't want to have to build a completely new set of API connectors for how data is transferred in every market you operate. It's just an unnecessary market overhead. Similarly, there's a whole bunch of fintechs that operate now on a global scale. And again, they don't want to have to connect and reconnect in every situation. So the engineering overhead of not having what I would describe as common plugs and sockets is an insurmountable barrier to this marketplace and will have a profound impact on global GDP. The friction in financial services through how data is shared is a very material inhibitor on economic growth. The fifth and final area, which straddles a number of the others, is the potential of creating an economic crime unit, where obviously in markets where we're starting to look at fraud and money laundering and money mules use cases, the really smart criminals don't launder money within one bank or within one country. The money pings around the international system very quickly, and these things are only typically handled at an individual company level or at best at a nation state level. So we thought within the Centre of Excellence we could begin a conversation about developing pattern recognition at scale to begin to properly combat the effects of organised crime and terrorism.
Okay, thanks very much, Gavin. Again, loads there. I mean, Gbenga, what do you hope, as a global centre, the Guavacore can deliver, both globally and at a more local level as well?
Thanks, David. So I'm speaking about this from the perspective of being a researcher at the University of Edinburgh. And as you know, the University of Edinburgh has been a champion for the Global Open Center, Open Finance Center of Excellence for quite a while. So we are a leading global research intensive university, and that means we've always been quite a trusted repository for data. So I think the university's involvement in Guavacore, with that involvement, there is an opportunity here for us to develop an expanded focus on driving aggregation of data from various sources to rapidly respond to policy and industrial challenges, some of them macroeconomic that Gavin just touched on. And the research generated through Guavacore's collaborative activities, or the research that Guavacore's activities of being able to source data and aggregate data can help advance. That kind of research can inform policy and practice when it is most useful. This is an area that academic research is not typically famous for, that is being able to respond rapidly to challenges that are being faced by industry or that are facing government. So the framework that is being put in place right now at Guavacore in partnership with research colleagues at the University of Edinburgh, other Central Scotland universities, and other research and industry partners, that framework should shift the focus to real-time impact of research. And that is basically, I think, where this is something that I think Guavacore can excel in. And being able to shift focus to making research have real-time impact as quickly as possible, that can have a significant effect on innovation, which can be faster paced than traditional university-led research. And it can also have huge economic welfare impact. An example, a very good example actually, is policy response to the economic effects of COVID-19 lockdown that we've seen in recent times. So government action can benefit from a more rapid generation of insights from research. So government action that have been taken so far could have benefited from activities of an organization like Guavacore, or a collaboration like that is Guavacore. So policymakers need to know the type of measures that will generate the most positive impact on the lives of people in an economic crisis, like the one that we're pretty much in right now. And they need to understand the long-term effects of such action on welfare, and as well as where exactly to target whatever measures that they are that they're developing. Now, all of these questions will require, of course, theoretical modeling, but insights big financial and economic data analysis offer can also be invaluable. So the kind of research strategy that we are looking to put in place at Guavacore should help achieve this in the future. Mainly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. Rafaela, there's obviously a lot of actors on the stage here with Open Finance and Guavacore specifically. Have we got the right stakeholders on board? And how specifically do we cut through to the consumer and get the consumer maybe some kind of understanding of how these very complex decisions can benefit them in the long term?
Yes, thank you, David, for this question. So first, I think Guavacore had a very good strategy in involving as many stakeholders as we can, that are all, they can all be beneficial from open finance. So as GB mentioned before, first, the idea is to involve government bodies that they can regulate and they can use all this data to address macroeconomic problems. And then it's obvious that it's important to involve the business community. So Nicola, before she mentioned that in Scotland there is a big fintech community that can benefit from open finance because they can produce new kind of solutions using this new kind of information that is available. Then obviously financial institutions, that they can have a broader picture and a more precise risk assessment on their customers. And then I would mention also charities. So what we are trying to do is, we think that, as Gavin mentioned before, that the stakeholders that can benefit from open finance are vulnerable individuals, and they can be also vulnerable companies, so SMEs. For vulnerable individuals, we are in contact with a lot of charities that they are using or they will use open finance in order to provide new services to people that they have been traditionally excluded from. But I think so it's important that all this community work together in trying to understand which are the main challenges and also how to regulate all these new sector.
Okay, thank you,
David.
We'll come to regulation in a minute. Nicola, what economic benefits do you think Guavacore can deliver in the city region? Because while it's got a global perspective, those local economic benefits are crucial as well.
Yeah, absolutely, David. So I think Guavacore presents a really great opportunity for research and development in the financial services sector, fundamentally at its heart. And the financial services sector is significantly important to Scotland. So the opportunity to strengthen, to innovate, and to positively disrupt that sector is certainly presented through the opportunities that Guavacore will offer. And Guavacore, in essence, creates that neutral convening opportunity for these organisations to come together, to collaborate around these big industry issues that then create innovation. So I see opportunities from an economic perspective across the financial services industry as we strengthen that and we really think about what the future of financial services needs to look like. And then inevitably, there will be smaller enterprise opportunities through all of this. We will create an innovative environment that allows the currently 143 fintech SMEs in Scotland to grow to more and more small businesses coming around really difficult issues where their agility and their ability to innovate and positively influence change will shine through Guavacore and access to the data set that Guavacore has the ambition to create. And then thirdly, David, I think we will start to see this type of opportunity recognised across industry. So we're already seeing potential for innovation around the issues of climate change and energy. We'll start to see broader economic considerations in that space. As well as many others, we'll start to see collaborations across health and financial services. We'll start to see broader collaborations across the economic sectors that will really help and strengthen Scotland's economy, as well as allow us to kind of position this as the global centre that we want it to be.
Okay, and how important is it that Edinburgh's got these strengths in both fintech and data in that?
So it's vital, in my view, it's absolutely vital. We're really lucky in Scotland to have the depth of the academic community that we have sitting alongside the financial services sector here in Scotland. And you know, let's be really honest. Guavacore, as GB mentioned, presents an opportunity for us to do research in a different way in the financial services sector that we haven't done before. So that fantastic opportunity to bring together different perspectives so that we can advance the future of financial services is presented through Guavacore.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, Nicola, Rafaela brought the regulation issue up there. You've got a regulatory background. What do you think the main challenges are when it comes to regulating open finance?
Goodness, now there's a big question, isn't it? So this is a really, and we're creating a new paradigm, aren't we? So we have to have the regulators involved in this as we step through it. So it's about, you know, how do you regulate what you don't know? So the regulators will also be keen to learn and to progress their knowledge and understanding, I think, as this grows. So it's great to have the regulators involved. One of the stakeholders in this group that we talk about involved in participating in the conversations around this. And we have seen the FCA recently open its consultation around open finance. And in the lead up to that, it absolutely engaged the industry as it thinks about this collaboratively. So we will inevitably, and we already do, have lessons from open banking that will inform us as we think about how we progress this into open finance. And I don't think we should underestimate the volume of work ahead of us, but the prize is worth it. And we absolutely should be, it's a fantastic opportunity for Guavacore to really think about this and the communities around and about. And I've seen some of the participants on the panel in listening today are from regulators, are from local authorities, are from the kind of environment and communities that we want to include as we build Guavacore.
Okay, Gavin, I keep realising I'm asking you enormous questions, so I'm going to make this one a little bit more straightforward because I don't think we've got time for seven more points. So, what's the process of Guavacore from now on? What happens now? What are the biggest challenges right now? And what's the timetable for really getting it motoring and really starting to do some really important work?
So Guavacore is doing really important work right now.
Mm-hmm.
It is orchestrating the ingestion of financial data from sources that aren't typically available to policymakers and curating those data sets within the National Data Safe Haven on the supercomputing infrastructure using world-class data science resources with strong data governance and ethics and a whole raft of things that surround such a process, and then creating capability through the Economic Observatory to inform policies during the financial crisis that's accompanying the health pandemic. So that's one thing that it's doing right now, and that was, the Economic Observatory was long part of the plan, but given the current context and the ability to get the process moving in a helpful way. We spoke at the start of the process to the people in the Canadian and US regulatory and government authorities, to the European Commission and to other large markets across the globe about participating. And they were quite keen to see how we managed to get this going at the UK level. So we're working very vigorously on those objectives. We're also going to require to build substantial further capital. As you mentioned at the top of the call, we've got a UK government grant of circa 23 million. That is a building block for us, what I would describe as a cornerstone building block. We intend to match that with private sector funding. And as Guavacore internationalizes, it will require resources from other markets to participate to make it what it needs to be. At some point at the end of this year, Guavacore will be spun out into an independent entity. And it's important for the Guavacore objectives that that entity is clearly representing the consumer and end customer interest, even though it's working with governments and regulators and industry. It's critical to Guavacore's success that it builds public trust and that it has people involved in the governance that from different countries and from different backgrounds to give it that diversity and to ensure that the ethos for which the partners who founded Guavacore is carried through into the new entity, making it a force for better outcomes in society. And in terms of the practical implementation of that, even with the funding we've currently got, there'll be a requirement to hire, tens of permanent people into the organization, perhaps 100 in the first phase. And in addition to those people who are directly employed in Guavacore performing its functions, there'll be a sort of industry of partners and relationships and in academia and industry, in data science, who are in some way attached to its activity. So there's a lot to do, and we're working in an extremely focused way at the moment in trying to execute the current plan whilst building the future plan.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. I'll just come to the other three panelists because we're quite tight for time. No more than a minute each, please. What do you see as the biggest single challenge? What do you see as the biggest opportunity? And are you optimistic for the future? GB, you first.
Thanks, David. I think the most significant challenge facing open finance is ensuring that consumers remain the effective owners of their data. There is strong data governance, and history suggests that over time, even the best of policy intentions can lead to unintended consequences. So in order to ensure that continued consumer and societal buy-in is achieved, consumers must be adequately protected. And in terms of opportunity, I think the biggest opportunity is the opportunity to eliminate noise in the price discovery process within the financial economic systems. I spoke about this earlier, and Gavin touched on the need to erase information asymmetry as well. I think open finance can help achieve that. And on that front, I'm quite optimistic.
Okay, Rafaela, challenge, opportunity, and are you optimistic?
Yes, thank you, David, for this question. So I think the big challenge, that is also what we are seeing in Guavacore, is for big financial institutions. It's obvious that they are reluctant to share data since they have they are afraid of losing their market power, so they don't want to share this kind of information with other companies. So I think that's the biggest challenge, and for this reason it's important that the government bodies support open finance. And I think the biggest opportunity is for the fintech community, maybe because I'm based in Scotland, so I see that there is an incredible opportunity to design a new kind of product, and also it's important how we can define the synergies between these two products. Thank you.
Okay, Nicola, I'll give the final word to you as we come towards 1:30.
Oh, thank you very much. So in terms of challenge, I agree with Raffaele. I think it's around that creating that collaborative environment where everybody can come and play, so that we can all think about how we best utilize this opportunity to advance everybody's agenda. So I don't think we can underestimate the work that's going to be needed. But equally, as that presents a challenge, it presents the most fantastic opportunity to really come together, to collaborate, to really address some of these issues and progress this through innovation. So David, I'm very cautiously optimistic about the potential here. And I use the word cautiously really, really carefully there, because it will take that collaboration to really advance the opportunities that we see. So the foundations that we're setting here and the engagement that we have at the outset really will stand us in great stead as we march this opportunity forward.
Okay, Gavin, I'm just going to give you a final word, a brief one. Look forward a year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you like. You know, what's Guavacore achieved? Where are we?
Going to have to polish my crystal ball here. Yeah, I'd like to think that Guavacore becomes the start of a very interesting conversation across the globe about not just being able to compete properly in the market, but to work together on the areas which are not in the competitive domain, including improving security and customer protection and all those sorts of things, which are far more enabled when the industry works together rather than in individual entities and silos.
Great. Okay, thank you very much to Gavin, to Rafaela, to GB and to Nicola. Thanks to everybody for joining. There's a link to the other parts of the series that's been pasted in the chat box, and this discussion will appear on the DDI website very soon. So thanks for listening in, and thanks again to all our panelists, and a very exciting future ahead for open finance in Edinburgh, and great opportunities to reach far beyond this area and make a real change, as our panelists have outlined, to society and the economy in general. So thanks again, everybody, and to everybody listening in, enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.